Alright, hey everyone, welcome to another legacy video here on my YouTube channel. Today it's not going to be live gameplay, it's going to be a rerun of a trophy run with Cephalid Breakfast. So the reason for that is, once I started playing, I realized I had no idea what I was doing. So I basically just took that league as practice to get familiar with the deck, with Nadu as a card, and I ended up destroying each and every opponent in my way. So I figured it's still useful content because as the games kind of progressed, uh, bit by bit, I was getting into the groove of things. So I hope you'll forgive me for that one. So this deck, I took inspiration from Marco Montani, an Italian Eternal player, and this deck is basically cutting all the plan Bs and kind of the slow part of the deck, and it's straight to the point. So for those who are not familiar with Cephalid Breakfast, Nomads and Core white 1-drop with this 0 costed activated ability, you can keep targeting your Cephalid Illusionist, mill your deck 3 cards at the time. You will then hit Narcomoebas, you will then hit Dread Return and Thassa's Oracle. You can use this 1 copy of Cabal Therapy to either discard a Dread Return or Oracle in your hand, or, clear the way for some random hate as you kind of progress milling your deck. Let's say you're scared of Surgical Extraction, you hit Cabal Therapy early, you can kind of clear the way with this one early, but that's going to be a niche use case. We make sure we have consistency by playing 4 Brainstorms for Ponder, 4 Days for Force of Wills in order to, protect our combo and also stop our opponent's stuff. We also play Shuko for redundancy, 1 mana equipment. You can equip it for 0 mana and go infinite with the Illusionist. A single tutor here, tutors for a wizard, kind of cool. You can go get the Illusionist, or you can go get Nadu. So let's talk about Nadu a little bit. Nadu is basically this absurd value card from MH3 that really makes the plan B of this deck viable, because with Nadu in play alongside Nomads and Core or Shuko, you can kind of start plowing through your deck. You're going to hit lands, you're going to hit more 1-drops. You can keep equipping onto those creatures and trigger Nadu more times. Worth noting is it gives the other creatures that ability, and you can kind of target the same creature twice each turn. Do note that with Nomads and Core, you can also do it on the opponent's turn, and that is a ton of value. So a normal play pattern would be to just, hit a couple of lands, draw some cards, brainstorm Force of Will Days, and then kind of build this fort of resources. We play a couple of Lotus Petal in order to, accelerate out our game plan, pay a little bit more for days. Basically a racing card, I would say. And then a couple of Teferis as a catch-all answer to stuff like Leyline, Chalice of the Void, and also just protecting our combo since it's quite fragile. Sideboard, we have Powers against creatures, Serenity is against pesky hate cards, Negation against faster combo decks and hate cards, Veil of Summer against counters and discard spells, Lavinia against opposing broken decks, and a couple of Lanterns to not lose out of the yard against the blue-black menace. I have handpicked some games from the run, so yeah, let's get to it. All right, this is round 1, game 3 versus Teamer Delver. This opening hand looks quite decent. We have some mana sources so we don't lose to Wasteland. We have some plows to save time against their creatures. Brainstorm to transform our hand in the later turns into like a better combination, looking for our combo, and then a Veil, which is a good anti-Force of Will card. So let's see what happens this game. Meticulous Archive, turn 1. Basically because it's nice to develop the tap land. It's nice to get a little bit of selection. I don't necessarily want to cast End-Step Plow on the opponent's 1-drop, so this is just fine. I see a Ponder, which gives me more looks. Also, this is kind of an interesting play by the opponent. So usually the Teamer decks have like 4 Volcanics and 1 or 2 Tropicals, and this Sorcery Speed Brainstorm right away, it's really a sign of weakness in my opinion, but let's see. The context of this matchup is also I can just be a turn 2 combo deck sometimes, so the opponent will keep like 1 land, double force, stuff like that. Here we shuffle the Ponder. I draw into Shuko, and I believe what I do here is I actually develop the Shuko. So the upside of this is if my opponent does not have days, it's just efficient use of mana, and I'm not, since holding up Veil does not hold any value, it's a good play. I have Brainstorm, Fetch, Plow up next turn. The downside is if my opponent's on a one-lander and I do get dazed, looks kind of silly. Then I'm still 2 combo pieces away from winning. So I ended up actually getting dazed here, and I was a bit too fast on the trigger there. I feel like Daze was a card that really made that hand playable, because if the opponent's looking into the barrel of missing a land drop, dazing something is like really what you want to do. Here's Delver. I believe I don't worry too much about the Delver at this point, since it's mainly Channeler and better creatures like Murktide that I worry about. Here I Brainstorm before my land drop. You can play out the Flooded Strand there, I don't really mind. So here we have 2 of the kind of the same combo pieces, except Nomad dies to Lightning Bolt. So I think what I do is, yeah, I get rid of the Narcomoeba and a Lightning Bolt. And now I develop the Shuko. I have the second Tropical in my deck. Let's say I get forced here. I really don't think I will, but I have that option open at least. So my opponent actually ends up forcing here, and I think whenever you can find a spot where you can trade a Veil for a Force of Will, you should just go ahead and go for it. It's so much value. I can't trip, my opponent pitched a card, and I get to resolve my stuff. So now Shuko's in play, which is basically... now my deck is just an accident waiting to happen from my opponent's point of view. The opponent flips here with a Lightning Bolt. The thing about that is, Lightning Bolt is a good card, but once the opponent missed her land drop here, now it's pretty clear that I'm up against, not Daze, my opponent would have dazed my Veil. My opponent just showed their top card, which is Bolt. So now my opponent has another Force of Will, or nothing, basically. So let's see. I Brainstorm, I find my combo here, and it's pretty clear I should just go for it, force my opponent to have the Force of Will. I play the land out for good measure. Octopus resolves. My opponent kind of lets me get going here, if I remember correctly. Which could mean some kind of graveyard hate. So I just kind of go slow here, and then I hit, let's see here. I hit Cabal Therapy relatively early, which was a good reason to... it's a good reason to keep track of, basically. So what I do is I therapy my opponent. My opponent just has mono red cards in hand, which is... yeah, I mean, this is just not really a game once the opponent missed their land drop, and the game is just over. We take down the first match. In this match in particular, in the first and second game, I hardly knew what my own cards were doing, like how to use Nadu on my opponent's turn and stuff, so I got too embarrassed and stopped the recording, but yeah, let's see what happens in the next round. Alright, round 2, I play against the new... I guess you would just call it 12 post deck, or whatever you want to call it, like the mono green one. It looks like I've been sideboarding out a couple of Teferis and a Shuko for 3 Force and Negations. That deck is a one-ring deck, it's a Karn deck, it's different stuff. And I would guess their counterplay is mainly Crop Rotation, Bajuka Bog. Also, Vexing Bauble can be very annoying. The opponent goes Once Upon a Time into Forest. My hand... it's not the best, but I mean, I have a combo piece, I have a Daze, I could kill a Vexing Bauble. Except, also having the Oracle in hand is mainly just the downside, so yeah. Let's see what we can draw here. Draw a land, develop a creature. Also, my opponent plays Disruptor's Flute. Just a lot of cards that can make life a bit hard for me. Prismatic Ending, decent card for sure. It's a good, like, Swiss Army knife answer, I guess. The opponent plays a Tabernacle. So what does this mean? This means a couple of things. My mana will be tied up here, so I can't spike the Cephalid off the top of my deck and win the game, which is okay. We accept that. And I want to pay a mana to keep this alive. I had no idea the opponent would keep Tabernacle in the deck. Let's say I knew my opponent's configuration. Let's say I play against an opponent whose sideboard plan is public or whatever. Then I would probably play at the Shuko, because I don't want to pay a mana for Nomad here. But That's the hand we're dealt here. I pay for that, go to my draw step. Funnily enough, I do spike the Cephalid, so now I deploy an additional like one part of the combo, because if my opponent has to drop this flute, they can shut down one of them. So it's nice to have the second one developed. So here, what the opponent's trying to do is like steal one of my mana and then crop rotation. So I don't want that, because my opponent has the combo of the new land that's kind of every land type and Ursa's Tower in the deck. I don't want them to put together that combo. And I figure if I let the like land-centric deck resolve crop rotation, maybe they have an efficient way of making days irrelevant. So I end up countering with the crop rotation. The opponent plays Ursa's Tower, pass with 2 mana up. So what could that be at 2 mana? I can think about Endurance. I can think about another crop rotation. I draw Daze. I mean, I should just go for it here and see what happens. And the opponent instantly concedes. So this could have gone wrong if the opponent had another crop rotation. Then all of a sudden, I'm all in. I lose to that card. But thankfully, they don't. And we're all of a sudden 2-0 here. This is a racing matchup in most games. But actually, they have pretty good tools to make sure I just can't win, like Vexing Bauble, Crop Rotation Bajuka Bog, Disruptor Flute. Like, I felt like I kind of got away with it here, but yeah, I mean, I win turn 3 with double Daze backup. Pretty nice, pretty nice. So yeah, looking promising so far. All right, round 3. This is game 2. I'm playing against blue-black, you know, a fair version of Grief Reanimate. And I can hold up Veil turn 1 here. That's a pretty cool card. I'm wondering if Grief gets the Banhammer and we see like basically less black-based deck, what Veil of Summer will, you know, what its positioning will look like going forward. Who knows? But right now, it's quite decent for the discard stuff alongside the classic use against counter magic. So here, since I already have white mana in hand, it makes no sense to, you know, fetch my Surveil land. I kind of need to hold up that Misty. My opponent did not grief me here, so now we could be in a situation where my mana is kind of locked, but I think that's okay. I deploy my Tundra, play a Brainstorm. Brainstorm's a good card here because it lets me exchange some of my hand. Also, now I can play out a Petal, which will help me play around Days with my Veil, so that's kind of cool. Still have a cantrip, and I have a Nadu. Nadu is a fine card to just play out. Like, my opponent counters it, sure. If my opponent lets it come into play, then start with removal. All of a sudden, I gain a little bit of value. That's just fine. And if it sticks, very, very potent card. The opponent surveils a Troll to the yard and cast Brainstorm. So this is actually a situation where there is a world where I'm supposed to daze this Brainstorm, but I kind of give my opponent the benefit of the doubt that they're able to make a good play with that Brainstorm and maybe lure the daze out of me. Also, this could give the impression that I simply don't have the daze, which can come in handy later. Let's see here. I believe I fetch a Trop to get a fresh draw. I do. I draw a Flooded Strand, which is not ideal, and I ponder once more. And now I see all I want to see. I see my A plus B combo, and I see Graveyard Hate. So I decide to draw my Graveyard Hate first, play that out, get rid of the Troll, and just like stall out the game. Now, the beautiful thing is, on top of my deck, before we get to this Grief resolving, on top of my deck, now I have my combo hidden, which is pretty darn cool. The opponent goes Grief, I go Veil of Summer, my opponent dazes, and now I can pay with the Petal like I talked about. My opponent accepts that. Also worth noting is, game 1 was extremely long, and the opponent had stuff to do away from the computer, so my opponent's kind of, you know, interested in playing this, like, fast. And since I already Veiled here, I'm not going to bother dealing with the Grief here. I'm at 19, my opponent produces a 2-2. So I'll just let this Soul Guide stick in play, like, bad things could happen, right? Or worse thing could happen, rather. So yeah, Veil completely destroying Grief there. And I believe this is where the opponent concedes after I start going, yeah. My opponent has 4 cards. I play my combo. My opponent does not have anything, and that's all she wrote. Game 3, my opponent simply just didn't have enough time. So that was kind of a, yeah, not very exciting. So let's see how I sideboarded. I trimmed Shuko. I did not bring in Plows. I trimmed Shuko and Nadu for a couple of soul guides, just adjusting a little bit and still trying to win with my combo. What I could have thought about was a card like Dowdy Voidwalker. And you can definitely, make room for Plows. I'm not saying this is like the best way to play, but I was on the play here and tried to leverage that with all of my dazes and fast kill. Okay, that puts me at 3-0. Let's keep this ball rolling, shall we? All right, so round 4, I'm up a game versus blue-black mid-range, and I have sideboarded all of my pitch cards out, like all of my counterspells basically, and I've added Plows, I've added a couple of soul guides, I've added Veils, so pretty hateful setup here without fighting too much on the stack. Funnily enough, I have my 1 copy of Daze in the opener here. The side is fine, it's a bit weak to Wasteland, but depending on my first draw, I can either develop the soul guide, or I can brainstorm. I draw an Underground Sea, so I used my Underground Sea to play the Lantern. Generally, the Underground Sea is just in the deck in case I natural draw Cabal Therapy, and if I'm going to get Wastelanded this game, I prefer that it's the Underground Sea, so pretty simple stuff. And I developed the Lantern to basically make sure the Reanimate is not a factor. However, I will say, Soul Guide Lantern cannot get rid of my own graveyard. So let's say my opponent just discards Nadu and then reanimates Nadu. Then Soul Guide Lantern does not help me in that spot. Let's see if the opponent has anything broken here or just a Surveil end of turn. Surveil coming in, Bowmaster's getting pitched, and I get Wastelanded. So pretty nice draw with the second land here. I get to fight on. My hand has a lot of potential, but doesn't do anything right now. Lands would be very strong. This could be a game where I end up cycling land turn. That's kind of what I'm thinking about here. Also, my opponent plays Bowmaster, so when do I brainstorm, etc., etc. A lot of stuff going on here. I'm trying to get to my next turn. Okay, so I draw my second Tropical, which is a good draw. That means I don't have to be like super desperate when it comes to the brainstorm, but my opponent still plays Bowmaster, so also don't want to get caught. There's also the classic rule of thumb. My opponent milled over a second Bowmaster, so what does that mean? Is Bowmaster bad in their hand in general, or is it just, they have a redundant copy? Here comes Psychic Frog. Psychic Frog is a card that can just, by itself, basically win the game, so I obviously want to Daze there. And then I have the choice between cracking Soul Guide or casting Brainstorm, and I cast Brainstorm. I find my lands here, which is kind of cool. So I can get rid of Narcomoeba, draw another card, and shuffle away the Narcomoeba for good. I can't remember if I developed Shuko or Nomad here. But basically, I just want to use my mana in this situation. Shuffle my deck. Looks like my opponent disconnected here. I actually didn't notice that during the game, so let's see. Sacrificing for a basic plains. This is like a classic way when you have a basic and 2 duals, like corresponding duals. It's a good way to make sure that I don't get locked out of white with 1 fetch. The downside is something like I can't double. Let's say I can't cast Ponder on the same turn. I don't represent Daze. There's some small things, but in general, I like that. So here I'm actually proactively getting rid of my opponent's yard. They showed Murktide Regent in the first game, so yeah, not the best value play there, but I think it's reasonable. Here, my opponent figures it's time to grief and play Psychic Frog. So this is very powerful by the opponent. Grief just, checking what's going on here. Psychic Frog hits the field. My opponent lets me have the Nomad because I already have a Shuko in play, so Cephalid Lucianus is game over right away. I draw Veil, which might be good, might not be good. It's looking like I have to tap out for that Teferi next turn, so Veil doesn't look that great. And once Psychic Frog starts hitting, my odds are definitely declining, so I'm somewhat desperate at this stage of the game. There's a Brainstorm. My opponent exiles 3 cards to give Psychic Frog flying, draws a card. So here, my opponent wanted to exile 3 cards rather than discard a card from hand. There can be multiple reasons for that. Either their hand is very good, or they really want to, draw the extra card. And at this point, I don't think I have, too much of a choice with what I do. Here's another Psychic Frog. So with that hitting the battlefield, I decide it's time to go. I cycled the Veil on end step, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I cycled that on end step. I draw Ending, which is a fine control card. But I also draw Illusionist, and I play Illusionist and start targeting. So at this point, once Illusionist is resolved, Force of Will is off the table. I play around Daze. So which cards can the opponent have? The only 2 things I can think about here is Surgical / Verimacop, which will most likely win my opponent the game, or Fatal Push, which would have been good if my only combo enabler was Shuko, but I also have Nomad, so I can respond here. So I'm good against most things. Also, the other card, Force Negation. That card is relevant because I only presented creatures here. So let's say my opponent lets me mill all the way through. I would Therapy, sacrifice Narcomoeba to name Force Negation. And then, of course, if the opponent somehow finds room to play Flusterstorm or Spell Pierce, I'm in trouble. But that's why you should, study the metagame for those situations. Also, my opponent lets me play it out, which tells me the opponent has something. But it turns out they were just trying to look for a spot where, I would kind of click OK or not pay attention. But what you can do here is just respond. So I just respond, mill my whole deck over in response. Then this Fatal Push will resolve, kill the Illusionist. I can sacrifice 3 creatures. Stretch her turn back, the Oracle, and that's all she wrote. We're 4-0, baby. And yeah, let's go to the trophy match. All right, I'm on the play here for game 1 in the trophy match. I'm going to feature all 3 games to round out the video. My hand is decent here. I have a Daze, I have Illusionist, I have Nadu. Those cards are not that good together, but again, this hand has some potential. The Dread Return is already I'm all again to 6, but it is what it is. I can find a Surveil Land turn 1. Oh, Vault of Whispers. That basically means the Necrodominance deck. So now I'm very, very motivated to find Disruption. And like the skilled magician I am, I hit a Force Will off the top. So here I play Illusionist with the intention of, I hope my opponent goes for it, and I can use Force of Will, pitch Nadu and Daze to, make my opponent spend so many resources that winning from there is going to be easy. Also, with Illusionist in play, I have 8 ways to just win the game on the spot with Shuko and Nomad. Also, I would guess that deck only keeps hands that can kind of combo. Maybe my opponent needs 1 mana or something to get there. So I am definitely expecting a showdown now. Let's see. Chrome Mox. Pitching Spirit Guide, Dark Ritual, resolves. My opponent goes Beseech the Mirror all in here. I don't want any nasty surprises, so I want to fight over the Beseech the Mirror rather than whatever my opponent finds. My opponent can pay with a Spirit Guide, which is always super scary. And my Force Will resolves, which is always nice. So here, let's see what I think about this. I think what I'm supposed to do here is take the Daze, shuffle away the rest with my Misty Rainforest. Attack for 1. Fetch before my next draw. My opponent stalled out here after investing Ritual, Chrome Mox, Beseech the Mirror, and Spirit Guide. That's a lot of stuff. So now I'm just supposed to fetch. I think this is actually a small, cool detail. I think I'm clever enough to go for the Underground Sea here because I'm not getting wasted. So I have white and I have green, and I don't think I'm going to need double white or double green on any turn. So if I'm a good player here, oh, baby, that's good to see. I fetch the Underground Sea in case I natural draw the 1 Cabal Therapy. So now, instead of attacking, I want to start activating Cephalid Illusionist on itself. Basically trying to mill over Narcomoebas, I guess. I don't know if attacking for 1 is better than trying to hit Narcomoeba so I can attack for more. Who knows? Very, very niche situation. Let's see. I don't hit anything. I brainstorm into the combo. I ponder for good measure. Play Nomad. Try and go off here. The game's over. So I needed double counter magic to win, and the die roll to win game 1 here against the Necro Dominance deck. That deck is like super scary because it kind of forces players to, you know, build their deck and mulligan in a way where, you know, it could easily go wrong. Just the threat of how fast the deck is killing is just super scary. But we won the game. Let's see here. So I brought out my value stuff and my pedals, which I think is a mistake that I adjust for game 3. And I bring in Lavinia, Forcing Negations, Veil. So basically this, if my opponent keeps 7 cards, I cannot keep a non-force hand. That's just impossible. Thankfully for me, I do have a Force of Will. My opponent plays Cabal Ritual, Necrodominance. I pitch my combo piece. I get pacted, and the opponent's off to the races. So if you haven't seen how this deck wins, you can see here. They go to 1 life, draw a bazillion cards on the end step. Then as a fail rate, my opponent has a bunch of Spirit Guides here. As a fail rate, they run Valakut of Awakening and just gets rid of all crappy cards in hand and draws more. So now the opponent just needs to find a Beseech the Mirror or a Tendrils, and the game is just over. That's actually a lie. My opponent needs to cast the blue card I can't remember the name of first to, you know, give everything flash. There's another Valakut Awakening, so now the opponent has put a lot of cards on the bottom and just drawn the rest. So Manamorphose, Dark Ritual, Cabal Ritual. There it is. So let's quickly showcase that card. Born Upon a Wind. You may cast spells this turn as though they had flash. So once that card is played, Beseech the Mirror, Tendrils, etc., it's easy time. So the opponent with the casual turn 1 beat a Force of Will, storm off for 50. So yeah, that makes it 1-1, and we're off to the final game here. Let's see. So now I kind of get the memo. I cut some combo pieces for the pedals and have a better deck, because Lavinia, if I have land pedal Lavinia, the game is just over. So, and my hand is good here. I can hold up. It's nice. I can actually change the order of the cards here. I have turn 1. I can hold up Veil with double counter. So this time my opponent is not getting through turn 1. That's for sure. The difficult part about this hand is exactly this. Like, if the opponent starts passing the turn, I get to clean up, and this could be a bit iffy. Also, I believe if Teferi hits the battlefield, the game is also over. Almost, rather. So my end game is kind of trying to get to Teferi. Ponder, I draw Ponder, and it was actually a fairly tough decision to cast the Ponder. Now we obviously see that I got super lucky, because I kind of need to hit my fetch to hold up Veil alongside my counter magic. So what I can do now is I can put Veil back, Tapland back, Misty back, draw the Misty, pass. And now I'm just waiting for my opponent to come to me. So the good thing about this is I have a combo that wins on the spot. So my opponent can't just pass forever. It's not, my draw step is better than the opponent's draw step because I play cantrips. So the average draw just from the top of my deck improves the situation. So the opponent still passes the turn. So now I'm actually in a kind of weird decision. I play the Archive and I keep the second Veil on top of my deck. Thanks to the fetch line in play, I have flexibility in case some bad things happen, and I don't want it. So let's see. My opponent's missed land drop, so they're just sculpting for... I would guess my opponent goes off with 1 protection. I can't think that it's correct to wait for the second protection. My opponent goes Dark Ritual, I daze. My opponent pays with Spirit Guide. I think what I do here is I just daze once more with the tap land. I win that counter war. We move on with life. I don't want to draw the Veil, so I shuffle. the second Veil rather, because I'm going to play my tap land this turn, so the second Veil is not that useful. Funnily enough, I actually just draw the Veil. I keep Ponder on the top of my deck. Still playing towards Teferi here. Let's see if I'm able to do that. I'm not. So the opponent goes Necro Dominance. And I decide to go Days back the Meticulous Archive. The opponent can pay once more. So now I need to force a negate, pitch Teferi. My opponent did not play any act here, so these Veils aren't looking as great, so I decided to cycle one. I draw Force of Will, so I think I hang on to that. Yes, I hang on to it. I don't want to lose. Mill over a Cabal Therapy with this Veil. My opponent has 3 cards, passes back. I can't lose if I have Force Veil, so I just prioritize not losing, and eventually I hopefully find my combo or a Lavinia to put this game away. Or another Teferi, I guess. I have like a handful of cards here that'll do it. Petal is a terrible draw. I don't play it because of Brainstorm. Opponent passes right back. And this is where, sure, on average my draw is better, but this is my opponent's way to win this game. The opponent gets breathing room for, I don't know, like 5 turns. I draw 4 bad cards and a good one. The opponent draws 3 good ones, and all of a sudden they can beat my hand. Second Petal is obviously terrible. I still don't want to Ponder. If I was 1 combo piece away from winning, I would Ponder. But I think it's just better to have Force Pitch with Veil. My opponent keeps passing, and this is getting kind of scary with the way my draw steps have been going. The good thing is, I kind of realize my opponent will go for it once they have 1 backup. And I'm good against that, so that's at least cool. So here, because I draw Illusionist, I want to cast Ponder for 2 reasons. 1, I can find just Nomad or Shuko and win on the spot. And this is my blue card for Force if everything fails. Let's say I see 3 lands on Ponder, shuffle, draw another land, right? Then worst case scenario, I still have a blue card with Force Will here. Yeah, I saw bad cards. I clicked too fast there. Sorry, I saw bad cards. Go into another land. Playing out these 2 Petals, that doesn't hold value right now, even though they would hardcast Force. But if I don't have Veil backup, I still want to pitch Force, so I don't want to do it. So right now, I'm kind of hoping my opponent goes for it so we can kind of get it over with, but they don't. I draw a Cephalid. Now I play out the Cephalid because why not? Also, there's a way where I can try and predict the future here with Cabal Therapy, but I think it's very hard to predict what's in my opponent's hand. Do they have another Necrodominance? Do they have Beseech the Mirror? Do they have Ritual? All of those cards were already had already been cast, so no obvious 4 of left that I can name. So I don't flashback Cabal Therapy. Now my opponent starts to go for it, which is very good news for me. I Force a Will. I hang on to the Veil, and I draw another land. So this is where things can get a little bit tricky. Also, I think Veil can help me. Like, the opponent goes Necrodominance, then if I Veil, I can't get Tendrils on that end step, so there's some situation there. So now I think I start milling myself on the opponent's end step. Don't hit anything relevant. And then I draw Lavinia, which is just insane, because that deck is filled with zeros, and they're looking to Dark Ritual out stuff with only 1 land in play. I think that deck is like a 7-land deck or something. So I pass the turn here with the intention of fetching a Plains and activating Illusionist before my turn, trying to hit that Narcomoeba, and then start attacking, basically. The opponent draws for turn, and I believe this is where the concession comes in. Yeah, the opponent has seen enough here, and ooh, that was like super. I needed to draw a couple of Forces, couple of Dazes, couple of Veils to keep that deck at bay. Super scary stuff. But I mean, let's see. People like to play with new toys, so let's just see in a couple of weeks if Necrodominance is like a a regular in the metagame or not. I think for me, it's somewhere between like cool tier 2 option to have fun and you know, an actual deck that you would pick to in order to win your next tournament. Like it's somewhere between there for me. The verdict is out, to say the least. But yeah, that'll do it for this trophy run. I tried to pick some games where I'm kind of showcasing some sequencing, some potency of the combo, some potency of, you know, how to sideboard. But basically I was also just learning, to be honest. Like I didn't play this league to any world-class standard, but the deck was good enough to get the job done, and that's always awesome to you know, get good results and build some confidence, and hopefully do better tomorrow than I did today. So with that, I'm gonna leave you guys. Thank you so much for watching as always, and I'll see you next time.